Okay, we're going to be doing this kind of impromptu stream today because we just received the new GarageBand for iOS and iPadOS update. This is the update that brings the new glass compatible icon to GarageBand that makes it so that it works with, or that, I don't know, it's tied into the iOS and iPadOS 26 update that we got not too long ago. And so we've been waiting. We've been waiting for this to happen slowly to various Apple apps. And today was the day that they did it for the GarageBand app. And we still have not, as far as I know, received this for the Logic Pro app. And yet we are in the Logic Pro update window now. It's been just under 6 months since the last of the bigger Logic Pro updates. And so they've been going about 6 months. That means anytime in November, early December, who knows at this point. And so I thought I would talk about this just a little bit. First of all, the new icon for the GarageBand is above my head, and it looks a lot like the night mode GarageBand icon that we already had. But now I believe, at least from what I'm seeing, is that this is the new icon for both day and night. Similar. I don't know. I'm going to have to test it out. But that's not, I mean, the icon is not a big deal. It's not the thing anybody was waiting for an app like GarageBand. But in the past, what has happened, there's been this cycle of sometimes we get new features in GarageBand and then they trickle over to Logic Pro. Maybe it's like a testing ground. I mean, the step sequencer came into the GarageBand version before it came into Logic. So that was the thing. And then I believe some of the live looping type stuff, that may be a stretch, but some of that may have been, I think that actually came to Logic similar, but definitely the step sequencer, the smart instruments, which have really kind of turned into our session players. A lot of those concepts started in GarageBand and then moved over into Logic Pro once they kind of fleshed them out a little bit. But now we have this thing that's happening with GarageBand right now where it's in a huge drought of updates. In fact, the update that came before this one, so the new update today was 2.3.18, and they've been running on 2.3 for years. Let me see, 2.3 came out 8 years ago. And now we've just been doing the third decimal place. We've been doing 2.3 point whatever updates now for 8 years. And 2.3.17 came out over a year ago. So GarageBand for iOS and iPadOS hasn't had an update in over a year. It was in September of 2024, and we are in November of 2025. And so nothing for an entire year has come to GarageBand. And then they update the icon and they give us this update, which is just a stability and reliability update. There's no known new features, no known new instruments. And some of these things are pretty small. I'm surprised that some of these even made it to the list. But we're going to just really quickly cruise through it. There's 4 different stability and reliability things. It no longer becomes unresponsive or quit unexpectedly after dragging an audio region from one position to another. The crowds go wild. Songs now open reliability if they contain a touch instrument using the Sweet Cream lead synth preset. For all of you whose preset that is the favorite one you've ever had, you've been having a really hard life for the past year. GarageBand now reliably remains responsive after dragging an audio file from files to an audio track. cool. And then also there's a quit unexpectedly when connecting to a Bluetooth device. This is the type of things that this is getting right now. I don't even know if we need to go through all of them, but I'm just going to scroll down to the bottom of the list right there. So 4 general, 1 global track, 1 sharing, 1 editing, 1 recording, 1 MIDI, 1 smart instrument, 3 undo, 1 automation, 2 sound library, 1 plugin, 1 drummer. And this is actually a new feature. It's not just a stability, but you can now change the drummers by swiping on their pictures. Of course, we don't have that in Logic anymore because with the new session players, they did away with the drummer pictures. If they're talking about the headshots. And then 1 voiceover, and then those 4 that I already looked at. That's it after a year has gone by for GarageBand. And what would a release notes thing be without just a complete misspelling typo of the actual app itself? It feels a little bit like GarageBand, maybe not really an important project for Apple at this moment. I'm not sure what's giving that away to me, but this would have been, going into iOS 26 or iPad OS 26 with a brand new icon, and a year has gone by with nothing. This would have been a really cool time to do some sort of like really, important update or something flashy, or added something from Logic down into GarageBand or something. And yet they barely did anything. They did like the bare minimum fixes for an app now that is growing older and older and less relevant and less relevant. Let me catch up with some comments for a second. Plastodon says, it is so strange that with the amount of high-profile artists and producers using Logic that Apple isn't proactive with Logic. There was another announcement today, which I believe is Logic related, which not all of you, I don't know if you've caught this or not, but Phineas, who is a big-time artist, sure, I would say that, and a huge producer. He was the one who redesigned the music for the new Apple TV, like little logo that plays at the beginning of Apple TV shows and things. Of course, I can't probably play it on a live stream because then Apple will get every penny of revenue from this stream. But go check it out. If you haven't seen it, go to like macrumors.com or something. And it's like a 7-second little piece of music. And Phineas, he didn't actually shout out Logic as far as I can tell in his post, but he said something about Apple's awesome music creation tools. So clearly, Plastodon, you might be onto something. It's like we have some high-profile people who use this, but it's hard to say. So really what we're talking about today is the link between GarageBand and Logic. It's clear that GarageBand is one of those static projects for Apple right now. And I can say that based off of no updates for a year. Finally, they give us a new glass compatible icon and about 15 different teeny little bug fixes, and that's the whole thing for a year. And they've been on GarageBand 2.3 for 8 years. Clearly, the business model behind GarageBand is different, meaning that they're just happy as a clam with what it's currently doing, and maybe they pulled all of the GarageBand team over to Logic because we have the iPad OS version of Logic, right? And I wonder if they maybe in the background are saying like, you know what, we fit Logic Pro onto an iPad, but phones are powerful enough. Let's make the iPhone version of it, which they've been doing a proof of concept with GarageBand for, a long time now. Maybe they're working on a Logic Pro for iPhone version, and they'll be the first to have a major DAW on an actual phone. The phones could handle it. That's not the issue. It's the form factor is really tricky, I think, to make a full professional workstation on a phone. Cubasis works on a phone though, and so maybe, I mean, they wouldn't necessarily be the first, but Cubasis is not a full version of Cubase, and so again, back and forth in my brain a little bit. Matthew says Apple also only updates Final Cut Pro with stability updates. It's ridiculous. That's not 100% true. They just came out with the new features for the iPhone 17 raw footage compatibility, and that came with some new features. If you have a new iPhone 17, you can now edit all of the raw ProRes, which it's newer, and they've done in the past couple of years, they've done all of their stuff with like their mats and some of the other machine learning or AI, Apple Intelligence enabled effects that they have. I mean, they've done some really cool things, and those things are amazing. Some of that stuff is really incredible, and so I feel like Final Cut is definitely. Is it going as fast as some people would want? Probably not, but it can do some pretty cool things in the last couple of years. Let's see. And then a few more from Matthew as well. Forrest Franks. Cool. I'll check that out. Matthew had another question. Is MainStage coming to iPad? There have been some pretty big rumors about that. There's some other software that they were talking about. So the rumors are saying they brought Final Cut and Logic to the iPad. Now they're getting, maybe it's the Pixel something or Pro that they had bought a couple years ago, or that already had a version, but it was like a iPad OS type version, but now they're going to bring the full one. And then they were talking about bringing MainStage to it as well. MainStage has had fewer updates than GarageBand. I mean, that piece of software has been sitting around as is now for a long time. And they used to do a similar thing with MainStage as they did with GarageBand. There was a time when, after they bought Redmatica, the Italian sampling company, that they brought the auto sampler into the Logic ecosystem, but just in MainStage. And it sat in MainStage for a little while. This was like, man, it had to be 10 years ago, probably at this point. It's like when I first started making Logic Pro videos more seriously, which was, like 2015 to 2017. One of my first videos was about the auto sampler in MainStage and how much I wished it would be in Logic. And now it's in Logic. They quietly dumped it in. They barely even talked about it in the release notes or in any press releases. I think they were super nervous to put something like an auto sampler into their software because of what it can do in terms of intellectual property borrowing. I mean, you could hook up any keyboard that has MIDI inputs and audio outputs and sample it automatically and then have it in Logic. I mean, that's like Superman powers if you know how to use it. Plastodon says, I've seen comments about Apple releasing touchscreen devices next year. So if that's the case, then the iPad Logic would be all they will focus on until that's ready for it to be on laptops and desktop. So yeah, there is one of my kids who's in high school is super into following like the rumors of what's coming next, and he's calling it the iPad laptop. That's what a lot of that group is thinking that it is that it's touchscreen laptop, but it's essentially an iPad laptop, because the iPad is like a laptop. Really, if you put it on a stand and have a keyboard, right? What's the difference? But you can touch the screen and do that. Right now, if that were to come true, if that's what we're getting, and it looks like it's been long enough since Steve Jobs has passed away, and he was very verbal about never wanting to do touchscreens on a laptop form factor, because it turns out ergonomically it's not great for your arms to be up in the air. But it's like, if you have the keyboard, you're up in the air touching the screen when you need to and not when you don't. I think it'd be fine. I would be interested for sure. But of course, the Logic Pro for Mac OS has no business being in a touch interface. However, the Logic Pro for iPad does, and that would really support a lot of my suspicions about the iPad version of Logic being the future version of Logic, and one day we're all going to wake up and the Mac OS version will be gone and the iPad version will be in its place, and they'll have added some of the features that are keeping them separate. It's like they'll be adding more of what makes Logic, and we'll never see the environment again, but we'll have all the tiles and the touch interface. They'll add more session players, and if there's enough screaming, maybe they'll add a score editor, or they'll probably just buy a score editor for the iPad and have it integrated in, and get rid of the old score editor in the Logic for Mac. That's a lot easier than making a score editor in the first place. And there's some really great ones that have all the touch stuff built into it. So, yeah, I think we're headed in that direction. And now it just depends on how big the team is for Logic and how much time they need to really make the iPad version sing. But I have this suspicion that the Mac version of Logic has seen some of its last major form factor updates, and it will be replaced by the iPad version, and probably only cost you $5 a month. And Matthew says, I would love to see Logic and Final Cut somehow work together. They actually work together really, really well, considering they're not together. But the XMLs, I've had really good luck with XMLs in the past. The XML format allows you to export, your timeline into Logic, and then you can export it back. And they do seem to keep those formats updated, so you can go back and forth. Is that enough? No, I don't think it's enough. I think that it's okay for the moment. It's okay for the time being. But if they ever wanted to actually make those better, there are ways that they could make it feel a lot more connected. Plastidon says, I forgot which company that made a score editor went away not long ago, so that could be part of Apple now. Did Finale go away? I didn't think that was an Apple purchase, but there have been, you're right. What is that one that any of them that go away and say that they're just closing could be an Apple purchase, but it would have to be one that's iPad ready, not one that's like an old school desktop version. Yeah, and so Matthew's saying, didn't they just change to Logic Pro 11? Well, yeah, but they also just changed to Mac OS 26 after, I don't know, whatever we were on that was not 24 or 25. I think they're always gauging how much this is worth an investment for them. this isn't a company that makes Logic Pro as their bread and butter. This is a company that is doing a lot of other things, and they're always deciding which of the bloat they've acquired over the decades needs to keep on moving in the future direction. And for a long time, Apple had this, stigma of being like the creative workers' refuge. The Mac computers. If you were working in the creative industries, you were on a Mac, and I think that is still the case. I don't see many studios, like really pro studios, that have like a bunch of Windows computers in there. And that's probably even less now that AI is like integrated into Windows 11 and it's going to continue in that direction. But um, they've kind of have that reputation already, and how much of it needs to happen because they still make Logic, or can they, like, there's some bean counter someplace in the company that says if you move all of your Logic Pro engineers over to this other area, we can make an extra $1 billion this year. Do you think that they would even hesitate? I don't know. I don't think so. Oof, let's see. More comments. I should have put the comments up on the screen, but I did not today. Slopstream says DaVinci Resolve has a pretty nice DAW-like audio engine. You're right, and that's something that they're designing well, and it keeps on moving in a good direction. I don't disagree. I think DaVinci. I hear people talking about that, who are like independent filmmakers and audio engineers, and they're really into that. So there might be something to that. And it's all in one app, so it's not like it has to split apart. And there is an iPad version, and I believe that's happening. That's nice. Placidon says, if you had to change to a different DAW from Logic starting today, what would you go with? That's a good question for everybody in the chat. I'd be curious. Me personally, if I had to switch today, like Logic just quit, it would probably be, well, it would depend. If I could get my university to foot the bills, then don't persecute me too much. But Pro Tools is actually doing a lot of stuff right now. They just integrated all the spatial audio. They've got really tight ARA stuff happening. I would probably have to use a bunch of third-party instruments, and Pro Tools doesn't have those that are good. Or Studio One would be a choice. I know I just saw a review of Bitwig, their new version that's out, and it's close. It has some really cool things, but it's close. Ableton, I couldn't do just on principle. It'd be like me saying I'm going to use Reaper. For all you people who are, if any of you are Reaper users on this stream, then, don't let the door hit you on the way out, because I know you're upset at me now. Reaper users are the most glass-like houses on the internet. If you ever say anything negative about Reaper, then it's like the end of the world. I talk bad about my DAW all the time. Logic has some issues. I've dedicated my whole online experience to Logic Pro, and that doesn't mean I'm going to defend it to the grave. It means I'm going to ask for more. Cool. I'm catching up on some comments here. Yeah, I think it'd be Studio One. I have a long history with Studio One. I knew the team when they first released Studio One version 1. I was a beta tester in the early days for it. I had some students who were really proactive, and we built like a vintage keys library with a lot of the vintage keyboards we have at the university. And it was released with Studio One for like 5 versions of vintage keys that were made by me and my students for Studio One that they had arranged with us. It was cool. And they've added all the spatial stuff. They have all the surround stuff, which I use sometimes, but not all the time in my research. And they have great instruments for the most part. And for the moment, they have a large corporation that's kind of keeping them on track. I wouldn't be surprised if they have some sort of session player type instruments coming out soon. Their chord track is far superior to Logic's right this moment. And you know what though? I mean, overall, I'm not digging on Logic. This is not a bash on Logic day today, not even remotely. I keep on, toying with some of these new workstation updates that have come out. The Luna update I was messing with. Reason I'm always seeing if they're doing anything cool. Logic is actually in a really good place right this moment. Sure, there's a few things I would add. I would like a better chord track that worked with the session players more. I would like more session players, more style genres. But ARA, I would love ARA, right, to actually work. But I mean, it's such a small list for me right now of what I would like. I can go into Logic and create and do what I'm thinking, and it can almost without using any third-party tools, I can do everything that I want. It's really good, and it's more stable for me than it has been in a long time. I'm not having any issues with that. I'm not having issues. I've got all my plugins cleaned up so that third-party ones aren't causing issues either. And it's like everything that I want from, like just the mixing part, all of the effects, all of the instruments, all of the MIDI capabilities. I mean, it can do pretty much everything that I need to for a really solid workflow. So I'm not digging on Logic today. I'm not bashing Logic today. This is a more of a concern about Apple and what they're doing with GarageBand, and does that somehow point to other issues that we might be having? So is GarageBand becoming a duplicative piece of software? Meaning now, is there a Logic Pro for iPad version that's being scaled down into iPhone? And all of a sudden, if we have an iPhone of Logic, why would we even have GarageBand, right? But the iPad version of Logic, that one, we're gonna be on a live stream a year from now, and I'll be talking about how I saw it coming the whole time, that the iPad version of Logic became the version of Logic. And that's what everybody's using who uses it. And there will be some growing pains for sure. Some people are going to see that and they're going to switch instantly. And then I suspect that unless they switch to a workstation they already knew well, that they'll switch back over time, because they're going to realize that, the iPad version of Logic is not that bad. It's actually pretty good in a lot of ways. I'd be using it on my Mac if I had a Mac version of it. Why not? Right? It has most of the tools. There's a few things that it's missing right now, but they're going to add those in for sure. Plastidon brings up a good point about Ableton and Cubase. It'd be sure nice to switch to those if you're rich. Those updates, whenever they do big updates, cost actually a significant amount of money. That's the thing. It's like we made a deal with the devil, right? We are lucky that Apple owns Logic and is supporting it and giving it to us in the way they are. because it means that they're not giving us paid updates every time. That's a really significant perk to using Logic Pro. Maybe I'd switch to FL Studio, which has lifetime free updates, and maybe that's what we'd have to do for my home studio setup. And I try not to invest tons of money into what I do at home. But that is a big thing. So big company can afford to give free updates. Companies that focus on the music creation solely, say this was, eMagic or whatever. I don't know what else they had in their software portfolio, but back in the day when you bought Logic Pro, it was like $1,500, $1,000, at least $1,000. It was expensive. And so that part of it I don't miss. Some people are like, man, I miss the old days with Logic 7 or something. I'm like, do you? Do you miss the cost of Logic Pro Studio 7? Whoa, I don't miss that. I don't miss the cost of that one bit. Matthew says, I think the problem with Apple is they probably have to go up the chain 15 times to get some new feature approved. It could be. And Matthew wonders if they're actually actively daily users of Logic. So George says GarageBand is the gateway drug to Logic. I used to really believe that it just came with your stuff, and it led into Logic Pro. But the two are getting further and further apart in some ways. Now that GarageBand essentially is not being developed actively. They're just getting further and further apart. And so I wonder how much that is the case anymore, and if maybe like a Lite or an iPhone Logic Pro version would make more sense as a gateway drug moving forward. Slopstream says, probably not adding the environment to the iPad ever, though. I agree with that. They've taken it out of the Logic Pro version, kind of. It's still there, but you have to use a key command. It's not in any menus now. They did that like a year or two ago. So a new user of Logic will never find it unless they know the key command. They'll have to have heard about it from somebody else. DTHM says, I don't even mind paying for updates if the features are worthwhile and are frequent, which is the one thing I have an issue with Logic. Although right now, like I did a video a year or so ago about every update up until that point of Logic Pro 10. And I went through and I looked at every single one, when it came out, what features were released with it. And they've been inconsistent and erratic at best. There were some years when they would release like an update and then very short turnaround until the next even bigger update, and then it'd be other times and it's like 8 months. The last 2 years, I feel like they've stabilized a little bit, and that's what we're hoping for right now, is that the next update to Logic will come out like this month, because it'll be 6 months since the last of the bigger point updates. Like I don't say like 11.2.2. I don't call the 11.2.2 and the 11.2.1. Those are not like significant updates. They do what we did here with the GarageBand release notes. They fix some things, stop it from crashing as much. We need those, but I wouldn't mind if they said, you know what, first Wednesday of every month, we'll give you a 11.2.3 or 11.2.4. And we'll just fix bugs. They're fixing them all along. Why not just give them out? And then every 6 months, we'll give you 11.3, 11.4. And so to get to version 12 would take about 5 years, right? Every 6 months, approximately. I could live, if I knew when they were coming, I would be less critical of it. It's the not knowing and then the not having any idea of what's happening that could be problematic. But they are tied into a lot of other pots. Music, the Apple Music ecosystem. Does Logic still make the right format for those? Are they going to change that ever? There's like other things that could be affected by this. Let's see. Matt Parson says the layout of iPad Logic feels a little clunky. I find myself opening and closing panels a lot. Maybe I just have to spend more time and get used to it. No, I don't. I mean, I think that's accurate. There's ways that they could do this. But they haven't really. So they've done the main version for the iPad, and they've done a couple small updates for it. But it's still like in its infancy in many ways. And so I'm thinking that there's a chance that some of that will continue to get better as we go along, as they sort it out. But I wouldn't mind, like, what you're saying there, like just the menu bar across the top, which they've added now in 26, iPad OS 26. I wouldn't mind running Logic for iPad with a keyboard, typing keyboard, and be able to just, scroll through full screen windows more often instead of having these panels that slide up and down and over and over. But it's like, give me the full mixer. I want a key command that just makes the whole screen the mixer, or the whole screen all the tracks with automation, or the full screen or split screen with the library and wherever that goes with there. Or full screen with whatever instrument I want. It's like, I want to have this instrument up. They can get rid of like all the clunky knobs for every single virtual instrument that Logic has and actually make it more usable. But there are ways that they could continue to improve that. But right now, it's not you, Matt. It's them. It's a them thing. It is clunky. You know what would really fix that issue a lot? Letting me use Logic Pro for iPad on my Mac. That would fix tons of those issues because my screen can be whatever screen I buy, right? And then it pulls it out into that workflow. And so I think some of the clunkiness, especially if you have one of the smaller iPads, is going to be hard to really sort through, but I think it's possible. Just like triple click on any part of that screen should make it full screen, and then a quick pinch in should make it back to the default. 3 clicks on whatever thing, full screen, pinch, makes it back. I would be able to navigate everything so much faster. Right now, it's not that simple. Slopstream says eMagic Logic 6 was so it's $1,000. Whoo, $1,000. And it does like a fraction of what we can do now. Really. I mean, honestly, does a fraction. Matthew says, is there a way to use the Ableton click in Logic? I thought so. Man. Ableton Link. Yeah, it does. I have not yet used it. I've tried it out a few times with a few iPad apps. But you can definitely use Ableton Link in Logic Pro for Mac. Unless you're talking about something else, Matthew. Slopstream says you can actually use any sample. Cool. I mean, I need to make a video. Maybe I'll do one later this week about all of the things in Logic that are amazing. just have like a love fest and say how grateful I am for Logic Pro, because it is powerful, and it's really catered to the things that I personally care about, which it's like I feel like I'm a relatively average user of Logic Pro in many ways. There are some things that I could care less about. One of them would be live loops. If they got rid of live loops tomorrow, I'd be fine. I have refused to make a video about live loops on my channel because I don't think it doesn't speak to my brain. Oh, you're talking about something different. The actual click track. Yeah. So if you come down, here's the Klopfeist right here. Klopfgeist. That's for the actual click sound. Sure. You can load any instrument in there. The Ableton Link that I thought Matthew was talking about is something different than that. It kind of like Reason Rewire that allows you to run two pieces of software connected to each other with transport timing and everything else. So whichever those two things. In fact, the one nice thing about the metronome in Logic is you don't even have to run it through the click track at all. You can just send out MIDI data to anything. If you're in a big studio with a board and a bunch of outboard gear, then send MIDI out to one of those and have it be your click track. Matthew says, imagine if this existed in the 1920s through 1970s. We missed out on a lot of original music. We should be grateful, honestly. LOL. Yeah, I mean, that's complex. The quality of what we can get in more scenarios is better than ever. And right about the time that we're getting this all dialed in, AI music is trying to distract us. I see why people love things like Suno, but it's a distraction. Don't give in. You can still have a really fulfilling career as a performing musician or a composer or other things. You have to work for it, but you've always had to work for it. And just realize that the AI stuff is not yet to the point where it can actually replace you as a musician. You can do things creatively that stuff cannot do. I can see why some people think that, though, because of the way that it works and the instant polish you get out of something when using it. However, it's not doing some of those really creative things that I've been hearing. I look at my students at the university all the time and think, wow, I never would have thought to do it that way. And it's surprising, unexpected when a human does something really creative. And AI does not has never once said to me, wow, I never would have thought to do it that way. But what it does do is something that is really impressive in terms of the speed that it can make a full song, and the ability to mimic what we've done in our music. And I think that part of it it's gonna hit a ceiling of what it can really do, and we're still gonna look towards humans who are doing things that we're not seeing coming. Maybe it was on like Music Tech or Music Radar, one of those sites. They just reviewed an album of some guy who brought an organ into a dilapidated store. I don't know, like a J.C. Penney or something. And they just recorded a whole album of them doing their organ music in there. And I thought, that's something AI could never have done. There's no way in the world that AI is going to be like, let's do the sound of an organ in an old department store that's like dilapidated and run down and falling apart, and then somebody will be interested in it. I mean, that's so cool. Matthew, I have really complicated feelings about the thoughts on AI for helping with rhymes and songwriting. I've experimented with it for sure. And every once in a while, I give it a stanza of a song and say, this doesn't quite work for my rhyme scheme. Can you, ChatGPT or whatever else, can you like redo it so that the rhyming feels more natural? And it does. It does. It has worked. Could I have gotten there without it? I hope so. Um, Again, those are all the words. It just goes off of what other people have said and sorts it out. But I would love to see more and more artists take like an originality pledge. You know what I mean? And say, you know what? I know AI could do some stuff with this, but this one thing that I'm doing is 100% free from it. I'm doing a Tuesday stream. I skipped last week, but I think tomorrow I'm doing another stream with my song project. We've done 4 or 5 songs, and a couple of the songs I've used AI with them just to add a part, but not until I actually wrote everything else. So the whole song was written, and then I gave it to Suno and said, I want some strings here or a choir here, because I'm curious. I'm curious on how this can play into what we're doing. I can't hire a choir to sing. Um, yes, I make YouTube videos that pay like pennies, and I'm a teacher by trade. I don't know how much you think that we get paid as professors. So it's not like I can do pet projects with choirs and hire them to sing. That's just not a possibility. So I love the accessibility that some of that brings, but I'm really insistent on bringing my own music to the table before it is a part of it. Do do do. Just reading down through some comments. Placidon's asking what time tomorrow. Oh man, I'm guessing probably around 10 Mountain Time. That's my goal for tomorrow. But it could be anywhere from 10 to 10:45. Just depends. But that's my goal. And in fact, I think we're gonna be wrapping this up here in just a minute. Great conversation. Thanks everybody in the chat for just being awesome. I was thinking that this could be a really interesting topic because, we're faced with these clues as to what's coming. To recap for those who are coming later, if you don't watch the beginning, this was all instigated by the new GarageBand 2.3.18. They've given up on ever going to 2.4, I believe. Although we might find that GarageBand 26 gets released, next month. Who knows? And so that relationship between GarageBand and Logic Pro is fractured and dying. It just is. And so that either says to me that they've put all their eggs back into the Logic basket and we're going to get something amazing here in the next week or two, because it's now on schedule with the actual time that the next version should come out, or it means that Apple's really struggling with a lot of things right now, and they're just trying to like get their foldable phone out, and smart glasses. It's like I hate it when, it's like, yeah, they want to make money. They've got a bottom line to maintain, and they got stockholders and shareholders to support and keep happy. And none of those people care about Logic Pro, is my guess. And so we'll see. We're going to find out. I say this probably every time, but I think this is the time. Before the end of 2026, we're going to know what's happening with Logic Pro. We can't even get a clear and concise future direction in a timely manner. So I wish I could say that it was going to be sooner than that, but we'll find out. And at some point, if Logic is ever abandoned, which I kind of feel like it's not going to be, I feel like that they're still working on it. But if it ever is, we'll figure out what we're going to do next. And if the next update is just another bunch of like stability and reliability things like they just did with GarageBand for the past, so GarageBand today came to 2.3.18. It had been over an entire year since 2.3.17 was released. And so the musical side of things is not a huge priority in the scope of everything. Oof. Let me see. Last comments. Matt says a quality of life feature request for GarageBand iPad would be fades on audio. Splitting in audio leaves clicks and pops. Yeah, that's been happening forever. And they're not doing it. So we're going to be, when an update comes, I'm watching every day. I'm on official update watch. That's what I do this time of year. I check in the morning, midday, afternoon, and then once it comes, we'll stream. Only like once in recent history has Apple given us a heads up, and that's like a week or two before Logic Pro 11 was released. And we found out at that point in advance. They announced it, and that was a really good week of streaming. We had a lot of people joining, and the channel like really bloomed a little bit for a few days. But I feel like this one, the next small update, is going to be a surprise. Okay, that's it. I gotta go. Thanks everybody for watching and for sticking around. And come back tomorrow if you want to see some music making with Logic Pro in the morning. And keep your eyes peeled. Make sure once you see something's happening with Logic Pro as an update, come back to the channel. Either we'll be live or there'll be a video that you could watch back. But that's it. Talk to you later.